up and working here, which it should be. Okay, cool. All right. So wait a few more minutes for people to come in. I will get my screen set up and then we can kind of go from there. Let's open this up. And then, yeah, if you just want to share where you're joining in from, you should be able to use a few different things. So down at the bottom, you can check out the chat. If you have any questions, you can drop those in there. You can also kind of raise your hand as well and use those. And yeah, always good to see where people are joining in from. So just drop your location and let you know where you're joining in from. Yeah, Pennsylvania, welcome. Denver, good to see you. Brazil, all right, awesome. Mexico, welcome as well. All right. India, welcome. All right, cool. So I'll go ahead and kick off here. Netherlands, awesome. Welcome, everybody. And I'll share my screen and then just make sure I have everything going here. So the screen share should be coming through. Let me know if you can't see that for some reason, but we should be all set there. Um, yeah, so today, like I mentioned, and you probably have seen this, we're doing like a spatial pipeline challenge. And I wanted to do this because I think it'd be a little bit more interactive, but also give you the tools to kind of do some of this yourself. So rather than me talking directly at you, showing a demo, anything like that. Basically the session today is to give you the tools you need to go ahead and get started and build your first pipeline using some of our new agentic tools that you may or may not be aware of, and actually going and building something with that. And that's the goal. So I wanted to kind of give you a view of what that looks like and the process that I've been using and that I recommend to actually go ahead and build this out. So I'll walk through some slides here and then we'll actually take a look at what this whole thing looks like in practice and some of the stuff we've been working on to hopefully make this a little bit easier as we go through. So the challenge is really this. Today is sort of the kickoff. You don't have to do these, today, tomorrow, and Friday. You can do these in any order, but it's really a three-step process to create a spatial pipeline. And I think that's the thing I want to highlight here is that some of these new tools will really help you speed things up in terms of your development, ideate faster, build faster, and go from there. So there's really 3 days, and you can compress this. You don't have to do this all at once, but you can kind of do this in whatever order you want. But really, the way that we're building spatial pipelines in practice is going through these different steps. So the first step is really getting everything set up. You need to set up your Whereabouts account and then get your tools connected, a base repository configured with some very basic things built into it, and develop basically your Claude or your main MD. That's our first step. And I know this sounds very like counterintuitive. It's like we're using a lot of the AI driven pieces, but I'll walk through why that is in a minute and some of the things that really help speed that up. And that's all the things we're going to cover in this live stream section here, right? And then the rest of it I'm handing off to you because ultimately you need to know how to do this yourself. The day two is the design. It's actually working with your assistant to design and develop and build your pipeline, right? It's really showing how to create a plan to tangibly build what you want and then have a kind of scaffolded build plan together. And then day three is actually going ahead and running that. You can build the job, you can map it, refresh it, and then actually share what you built and go from there. So that's really the goal. Set up, design, and then actually run. And that's the whole challenge. Now, you've probably heard this with a lot of different things. This concept of like AI is blind to the physical world. Um, I think what that really means, and if you have used, agentic tools or things like that, and let me know in the chat if of what you're using in your workflows, if you're using AI, if you're not, and if you are, what tools you're using. I think that the whole point here is that these language models were, if they're language models, they're trained on text and code and things like that. They're very good at doing that. But understanding what's in our world and how it relates to each other, especially when you want to do that across multiple different data sets and layers and things like that is completely left out of these models. They don't have that sort of real world grounding and context. And these are some of the things that it kind of lacks. It doesn't, understand the spatial geometry, doesn't understand the context of relationships, doesn't understand the physical world, data structures, and then some of those real-time elements that are out there. Um, a lot of AI tools that attempt to bring this in to this. Let me put it this way. If there's any context or spatial context you want to bring into your AI tools, it needs to be up to date, it needs to be running, it needs to be valid. It's only as good as the data you bring in, right? Now, we have some data that we bring in, and we'll talk about some of the open data we've been updating and trying to make more available to enable these types of things. And that's one big thing that we're pushing on and working on bit by bit. But the other piece is that it needs to have context to what you or the users that you work with actually need to answer. You can't go in and just start asking, what's the wildfire risk for this location today? Right? Because that contains so many different things within it. But what you can do is build a pipeline that helps serve that, right? And you can do that both using AI to help assist and build that pipeline, but then also serve those results back to your desired audience. And that's really what we want to do. That's the whole point of this spatial pipeline is that you're acting as the pipeline developer and then serving those results back to the people who need to see it, right? So the key is that we are using whereabouts as a context layer that fixes this, right? It's the context engine for the physical world, if you want to think of it like that. So it gives your AI the spatial awareness it doesn't have, but more than that, it allows you to build that context and that awareness much, much faster. So that if you or anyone else asks that type of question, it can get a response very, very quickly. So what we're going to do, and again, this is not a lesson on teaching you how to, code these things out or a specific language or anything like that. It's really about setting you up with the tools to explore and build this yourself. So the first thing you'll need is setting up a Whereabouts account. We'll walk through that in a little bit, but you need these five pieces basically. And these are some things that we've been working on. So the first is the Spatial AI coding assistant. That is your assistant in Claude. It's now we haven't officially announced this yet, but it's actually live now. You can go into Claude and add the Whereabouts assistant right now today, and you can go ahead and use that. Now it uses and that's in Claude, like the chat, Claude.ai. You can go ahead and use that and start using it now. That's sort of your spatial reasoning kind of assistant that helps you understand the data you have, understand the schematics, and you can help guide and structure the analysis given the data that you know that's in there. And that's what you can build there. Then there's the Whereabouts MCP server. That's the actual tool that connects. It's the tool that underlies the spatial AI coding assistant and helps you connect and go back and forth. It's also used in VS Code, so you can do that there. And we'll show you how to set that up in VS Code as well. Then there's the Whereabouts CLI or the command line interface. And that's actually allows you to, when you're building and coding with your coding assistant, run jobs rather than just notebooks and move those into sort of a production workload to actually run those and submit them from the terminal. And your agent can actually submit those and monitor them on your behalf, which is increasingly something that we're doing quite a bit of. The other piece, and we're heavily relying on Claude for a lot of this, but we're adding more AI coding assistants as we go along. And you can use any kind of mix of AI coding assistants that you want to, but the demo will be in Claude Code, is actually doing that and using some of these other pieces that give that coding assistant the structure that you want to give it. Now, I'm not advocating to let the AI drive everything you're doing here. And I want to tell you some things that we've been finding successful to do that. And no, mostly that has to do with setting it up with the right skills and setting it up with the right rules, right? The way that the coding assistants are set up, if you give them proper skills and structure, and that's, these specific skills, you may have heard about these before. That's one really important piece here. The other one is rules, right? And actually setting up very specific rules that you are giving it that could relate to the testing size that you want for your pipelines, that could relate to the way it writes SQL, That could be, the way in the semantics it uses to write the code to increase legibility. That could be just, in terms of how, the areas you want to, focus in on or things like that. You're giving it boundaries that it's not going to cross, right? And I think as increasingly, the more and more things are using and relying on I think having these pieces set up and structured well give you a very clear frame in which to actually build and develop against and use these tools effectively. So these things here actually help you structure it and guide it in the right direction. I think that's the most important piece out of all this is actually giving it that clear structure. So I'll show you the structure that I use. It's pretty simple, but overall. And then it's finally the Claude MD, which is the actual sort of like instructions, right? That's what you're giving the coding agent once you've set up the rules and things like that. If you give it some instructions, it can run reliably and build ultimately what you want. And I'm going to show you a very like hands-off version of this today, just as a demonstration to show you what it can do without heavy interference. And I'm not to say that you should go this way. You can also create a stronger, more directive plan for what you're doing, but you can do all these pieces together. So that's what our goal is today. Now, again, anytime you have a question, just when I look over here, I'm looking in the chat to check that out. So if you have a question, drop that in the chat and let me know. I did want to see if anyone's using some AI, AI coding assistants, if you use those today, what those are and kind of how you found them or anything you've worked on with them. So if you want to drop that in the chat, that'd be good to note as well, just to see how people are using them. Okay. So as you add those responses, I'll talk through the different pieces here first, and then I'm going to walk through each one of these to show you what it looks like in practice. So the first one is the Whereabouts MCP server. Now, if you're not familiar with MCP, that stands for Model Context Protocol. And this is the connector basically that allows you to query your catalogs and tables and schemas directly. It allows you to assemble and write code and then execute that SQL directly on the data that exists within your Whereabouts account. So that's really what it is. Now it's connected to the Spatial AI coding assistant. We'll see what that looks like, but allows you to investigate schemas and understand what data is there. It can run test queries or basically see if the query works and it's valid. It will loop over and make sure those things are working. And there's a lot of tools it has access to make sure the SQL is valid. It can do a lot of pretty advanced stuff from everything from writing, very basic spatial joins to, raster to vector joins. And we'll see exactly what that looks like in a minute. All these different pieces that it can actually build upon and use. So that's what it can do there. Now, that's what it is. It allows you to, explore your data and answer spatial questions in plain language. Now, there's two ways that we're seeing people use this, or three ways, I'll say, that we see people using this. There's like 2A and 2B. 1A and 1B, and then 2. 1A is that as a spatial developer, you're using this to explore data with text, understand what data is accessible, and then sort of structure a problem and tie it to real data sets that exist in your catalog right now. You can understand the limits of those data sets, but it allows you to really understand what's there rather than, going through and looking at each table and writing sample queries. You can hand a lot of that work off to actually start to understand what's there, the schemas, how they relate. Are these pieces important to what you need or not? And stuff like that. So that's one piece. 1B is that once you've prepped a analysis result and you want someone to get access to that, lots of ways that people access that, and we'll show that in a map later. This is the map that we'll be showing of what we've actually built, and we'll talk through what that means. But let's say if someone doesn't want to access the map and they just want to go through agentically and say, what is wildfire risk in this spot today? And just ask that question, the MCP and specifically the Spatial AI coding assistant enable that directly. So you can do that right now. Previously you had to add this as a custom connector, but today, looks like I have to go back through here. I had this open and customized, and it looked like it. Let me see here. Connectors, browse. So if you go into Claude right now, you can see here that the Spatial AI assistant is here. It's live. You can actually go in and connect this. You can search for it and it's available. And you can see the tools that it has access to. It can describe a table, it can execute a query, it can generate a spatial query. It can list the catalogs or the data that's in your account, the databases. So all of these are helping to list to see the available data, list the tables, and then probably the one I like the most is the ability to search our documentation. We put a ton of work into our documentation. The person Kelly who maintains and builds our documentation is excellent and very thorough. So shout out to Kelly for doing all that amazing work because all of that feeds into writing valid, structured queries at the end of the day. So you get access to all of that well structured and written documentation. And then that feeds into the ability to execute queries. So it's a exploratory tool to understand your data. It can build a spatial SQL query, can use the right ways to write those joins specifically for our platform, and it can actually execute a query on your behalf. So all of that's set up here with that spatial assistant. So you can go in, open Claude, connect to this directly, and then you're ready to start asking questions. Now you get a bunch of data out of the box, but so we'll go through that in a minute to show what that is. But I just wanted to call this out because you might be some of the first people to officially hear about this and go ahead and click it. So you can do that now and actually go ahead and check that out. Now, the second tool that covers kind of the spatial coding assistant and sorry, the spatial assistant and the MCP. The CLI is basically the ability to submit and monitor jobs on your behalf. So if you have a job that you need to run, this is where the pipeline piece comes in. And this is something that you can do and build out and run using your AI assistant. And you can run the job once, you can tell it to update it every day, schedule it all using this coding assistant, and it runs just as a job. It will basically submit the job, run it, and then shut down that runtime once it's done. It's very easy to stand those up and build them and go with these different pieces. And we'll talk about how it structures jobs, but that's probably the more important part is actually going ahead and understanding how those pieces are connected and stuff like that. So it's a pretty easy install. You attach an API key here, and then it basically has a full command tree to understand how the connection's working, make sure the output is set up and things like that. It's like a complete cloud sort of solution to say, here's the code I'm running. I want to build that in the pipeline and go from there. And then this actually runs and executes, then monitors that on your behalf, and then makes that available to your organization. Let's go. Leave my thing. There we go. Okay. So this is the structure that I think is probably the most important when we're actually building and writing the code or having the AI assistant write the code on our behalf. The first is that we have started building and are continuing to build agent skills, right? So these are a set of skills that have package knowledge of our APIs and our spatial SQL patterns. So it allows you to write that, code, that production quality code from the start, and gives it also some sort of skills to actually do that in a lakehouse pattern using a spatial medallion architecture and things like that. And you can do all of this sort of in one step. If you're doing this in VS Code, that installs all of this for you, so you don't need to do this separately. But if you don't, you can actually install it that way. Now, let's look at the skills very briefly. I think there's a few different pieces here that I think are really important. So you can see how each of these are structured. There's an individual skill here to talk about how it should write the job. So there's data discovery before writing job logic, CLI first for API operations. So it's kind of helping you do all of this so you don't have to kind of think about it. It's telling how to use our Python SDK. So some of this is a little bit in the weeds. You can check these out here as well. So there's the MCP workflow sequence, things like that, and then how to set up whereabouts usage. And we're adding a few more as well that you'll get a preview of today. But it gives you these structures on how to use our platform most efficiently. And when I say you, it really realistically, it's giving the agent that setup and giving it that structure as well. So that's the skills. You can add your own skills as well. And we'll take a look at some of the medallion skills I built into this and things like that. And we're adding some different spatial SQL patterns for more advanced SQL. So we're improving this over time to make your developer experience much better. So that's in the skills section right here. It sets up layer contracts and all these different pieces for you that are like kind of things that you want to structure in. The other one is the rules, right? These are hard-coded rules that you want to set up. Now, you can build these yourself by writing them in Markdown and setting that up. You can have your AI assistant structure them for you. that can manage a lot of different pieces from your secrets and things like that, how it should run job runs and how frequently the retry should happen, any configuration, any validation, and more importantly, like how you want to structure the code. I think anytime you do something like this, you should always have it written and output the code in a way that makes it easy for you to validate and check. So you're going back through and reading it, you can tell it how you want it to set that up and various, specifically structure that. I think that's an important part. It can sometimes you want to watch out for conflicts with skills to say like, maybe there's a skill that's helping you write a join in a specific way. You don't want it to conflict, but you want to give it some sort of, grammatical rules in terms of writing what you want to do there. And all that's set up here. So this is all you really need to get started, right? These tools plus a blank directory in VS Code with your rules, your skills, and your Claude MD. We'll write that with our spatial coding assistant. And I'll show you how to build one to help you go through this challenge much faster. So that's one piece there. So rules, I think, are an important part. I think this is where a lot of things can kind of get lost with some of the AI coding assistants as well. It helps it work like a disciplined engineer, right? So you can tell it to do append only for raw data, right? If for our bronze layer of spatial data, we only want to add new entries, so you're not rewriting every time, right? That's a very important piece. History is preserved, and you can have it there. It can have one configuration. There's keeps your secrets in env, has everything set up securely, so you can have all these different pieces. It tells it to do heavy work in job runs, so it spits it into and runs that in the Whereabouts Cloud Compute, not like a local session or in a notebook or anything like that. It does it the most efficiently, and it does some validation. I think this one's important because it enforces these layer contracts. Like each stage is verified before the next one is allowed to begin. So you're kind of setting up this complete pipeline with steps and dependencies right from your right here directly with these jobs, and you can build and test it, and you can even run this on your own frequency here to set this up. But it gives you this whole sort of data engineering and spatial data engineering thinking and structure and rules to guide that, so you can focus in on the analytical work that you want, and then making a product or a data set that can be repeated and used and run on a whatever basis you want, whatever frequency that you want to go to from there. Now, I to do this challenge, and do your first pipeline, I would recommend starting and building your Claude MD by talking or typing or however you choose to do that. I would open up Claude with the Whereabouts Spatial AI Assistant connected and use a very short prompt and kind of see what comes from that. And I'll show you the example that I built that does that, and allows you to basically take that result and drop it directly in the Claude MD, right? It starts with a question. Here's what I want to build on Whereabouts. Help me write this. You can define the architecture, use a bronze, silver, gold medallion set up on iceberg tables, rerun as new data arrives. You can give it some execution rules and structure, and then define the analysis that you want to build. Like, what is the thing you want to do? Mine was my question I wanted to answer was wildfire risk. And we have some data layers that we've been pulling in to help answer that question. So how can we actually go ahead and do this? So I recommend doing that for two reasons. One is that, Claude is very good at writing these markdown files, so it can actually structure them quite nicely. The other piece is that you can actually use the Spatial AI Assistant to scan the tables and pick specifically and recommend which tables you want to use. And then you can work with it to validate, this is a table I want. These are the features I care about. These features are great or they're not, and things like that. So you can kind of pull all those different pieces in and can set that up for you. You can take that into the repository and run from there. And then you want to verify the whole setup. You open in Cloud Code and say, you can check some of these different pieces and ask it questions. And basically you're set up and ready to start running right away and actually going in and testing and building. So it helps you with that step one to get the setup and the Claude MD and all those pieces. And then you can actually verify what this looks like. What are the columns in the bronze layer and how are they executed? And then you can start to pull in your specific questions here, right? You have that Claude MD, validate that it's checks, it, runs the checks against what you think and things like that. And then I recommend, kind of picking a question about the physical world that changes over time. If you want to do like a one-off static analysis, that's great. But I think also, phenomenon that are changing and shifting over the time is like, that's the questions that people really want to get to. And that's been the hard part to build because of all the things you've needed to bring in if you're building these spatial pipelines. If you're doing a static analysis and you can have a map in chat. That's all. That's great. But if you want to ask a question about something that's dynamic and changing, that's the stuff that I think has been the most out of reach. And these tools, I really do believe, have brought this into much closer reach for what we're doing. So you could ask things about fire and climate, which is what I did. You could do air quality, burn severity, things like that. You can look at flood and water, how is flood taking place, storm surge modeling, things like that, traffic and movement, congestion patterns, road closures, mobility analysis, agriculture and land, crop health, land cover change, all these different things. We work with raster, vector, and climate data with MetCDFs. So all of those are there. And again, you can use data that's directly in our catalog, or if you identify and know where there are data sets that you want to access directly, you can actually point the AI at those and have it run and figure out, do I need to hoist those into memory? Do I need to kind of read the tables remotely and check those out and do some different things there? Do I need to, create a bash script to actually download that data, pull the most recent stuff and go through those different things? There's all this stuff you can do to actually just very quickly find these data sets that exist, pull them in, and then load them into Airbots. And now you're basically have them as queryable assets with what you want to do there. Now we have a bunch of the open data. I'll get to that in a minute, but I also recommend doing this with one or two data sets that's outside of that. I did that with a specific data set here, which is so it's like some NASA fire data. I'm going to butcher the acronym, so I don't want to go on that, but it's the firm's VIRS, I think, is the data set name, but I might not be pronouncing that acronym correctly. But that's a data set that we haven't brought in. We probably will in the future, but it's just external. I wanted to kind of prove, hey, yes, this is something that we can actually pull in and see that result as we load that data in. Okay, so now you've set up and structured what you should do. Then you want to go ahead and design your pipeline or let your coding assistant walk you through that and go through those different steps. What I usually do is actually have it build and go through a planning mode to review everything that you've given it, propose the plan mode, the files, the tables, the orders, the validations, confirm the catalog names, and give you this full report back about what it's actually going to do. And then you can kind of guide and adjust it from there. I think that's really important to kind of give it those things back and forth. You need to review that plan critically. That's like this is where the quote unquote human in loop steps come into the place and things like that. Be very critical about what you want there, push back against the proposal if you don't like the way the analysis is being run or the data are, steps are moving through, push that back. And I think that's the important step here is that it's giving you a plan given your well set up repository with the rules and the skills and all the things like that and stuff like that. Now, the way I start to structured and think about this is that you should look at the file and the directory structure, understanding how the iceberg tables are being set up, the stage execution order, what's happening and in each step, the validation checks that it's going to be running, or this, some of the CI/CD checks, and then understand that you have those catalog sources there, or it has a plan to ingest that external data. It'll give you this really kind of robust plan that I'll actually go against and build from there. So that's what I would check in here. You need to use your judgment in the steps. And then you basically want to run your pipeline here, right? This is the actual running this one step. For the challenge, you can run this on a very small area. I did one county in California just to make sure it's running, but you can scale it up as you need to and move this into different pieces and stuff like that. And it's really one prompt per layer. The assistant kind of builds it from there. It has the bronze ingestion to bring those layers in if they don't exist. So for this case, that was that VIRS data that we wanted to bring in. There's the silver spatial transformations and then the aggregations or indexing and stuff like that. That gold layer is the one you want to map. You can wait for the data to arrive and see how that goes through. And it says you can basically go through the prompts and have it build those in each step. Build a bronze layer, validate, check. Build a silver layer, go ahead and check and stuff like that. And I'll show you some of the skills we built in to actually go ahead and embed all the stuff we think about in terms of spatial medallion architectures into a skill so that you have that and you're ready to go from there. And then most importantly, as we go through this, I'll share this at the end, but I want you to share your results that you get back from this. I'd love to see the maps that you build and things like that. Maybe if you can share your questions, what problem did you take on? What framing did you use? What did you surprise? What was your experiences with, the coding tools? That's the other part I want to see from this. So as you are able and go through this, you can reach out to me directly to, kind of understand these different pieces. If you have questions, I'll share all that information at the end. And we want to see the results, right? What are the things that you built? Share your pipeline, share the maps that you build and stuff like that. And that's really the whole piece with this challenge. So I'll stop there just to see if there's any questions. It sounds like people are using a mix of things like Cursor and Claude and Codex, Cursor IDE, transition to open code. Cool. So it sounds like some people are using some different tools, which is great. Um, I will share this information as we go from there. So if there's any questions, go ahead on the content that I've covered thus far. Go ahead and drop those in the chat. But let's go ahead and kind of walk through some of the things that are available and how you can actually use them. So I mentioned the actually building out the spatial assistant. Well, it went away again, but the spatial assistant, which is there, you can go ahead and add that in Claude right now and go ahead and build that out. I just want to walk through some of the open data that we've been bringing. We've really been expanding, and we're continuing to expand a lot of our open data to make getting started a lot easier. So the first thing, if you haven't signed up for a Wherebots account, you can go ahead and head to wherebots.com and you can click try Wherebots here. Well, actually, it will make a little bit more sense because I'm signed in there. Go ahead and click try Wherebots, and you just want to sign up for the pro trial here. You can start that free trial, and then you can actually get access to all these different credits. So you get access to 95 when you sign up, and then you get access to an additional 250 when you start using the spatial AI coding tools. You just need to reach out and contact us, and then you have all of that to build your free pipeline for 14 days. So that's the challenge here. You can go ahead and get started. That's completely available to you to build during that time period. So go ahead and get signed up if you are not signed up yet. You can go ahead and get that there. And then what you do when you log in, you'll see this is a bunch of stuff that we have in here, but you'll actually get access to all this open data and our pro data as well to build your pipeline. So there's a ton of stuff that you already have out of the box. Like we have a complete global 30-meter DEM from Copernicus loaded in. We have the things like meta canopy height data set. So this is a raster data set that pulls in canopy height all around the globe. You can see the schema here. It's just a raster data set. Of course, we have all of Overture Maps data. We've been pulling in, and this is a pretty good example of live data of storm warnings. So we've pulled in, this loads hourly. So we just started loading since we have 2,093 snapshots so far. And this is every storm warning from NOAA that pulls in every single hour. So we have every storm warning that's been there since, gosh, I think like July or something like that. So a lot of data that's been pulling. It might even be before that as well. We also have the US Census, which we've been loading in. So there's the ACS for 2024. There's some estimates and all the different boundaries that you need to go with along with those. And then our pro data as well. We have OpenStreetMap. We have some other data here from, some different sources as well. We have some weather data and things like that, wildfires and stuff. So we're increasingly adding more and more data in. And any input there would also be great if you have things that you want to pull in as well. You can actually leverage those data sets and make use of those. So the other pieces that you want to get set up are here. And if you just go to docs.whereabot.com, there's like a big section right at the top here to get these set up between your MCP server, your agent skills, and your CLI. And these are the big three that we want to get set up and pulled in here. So the MCP, you can actually go ahead and set this up. Like I mentioned before, it does things like catalog exploration, notebook generation, data quality assessment, stuff like that, and answering general geospatial questions. So there's all these different pieces that are here. You can kind of see what it's running, and you can go ahead and install these different pieces directly here. So that's one way to kind of go ahead and get started there. You can set that up in VS Code and connect the MCP server there as well. So that's one. You can also connect it directly into Cloud Code and things like that. So it will give you the instructions to set that up and go from there. I think here's the actual authentication methods and things like that. So you can set it up with OAuth here. There should be instructions for each different platform that you need, or you can do this with an API key as well. So here's all the instructions depending on your tool. If you're using Open Code or Claude Code or VS Code directly, just click whichever one you're using, and you can get the exact instructions for each of those different tools. And it can kind of walk you through all the different pieces here and how to get set up. So there's a lot of great, easy ways to get set up there. There's also, using VS Code if you want to go directly there. I saw some people using Open Code and Codex and things like that. So all those instructions should be here for you to get ready and configure all those different pieces. The MCP is that one that allows you to do those spatial queries back and forth. The other one is the using the CLI as well. So you can use the CLI that actually allows you to test run the jobs and things like that. So Claude Code allows you to understand the tables and things like that. Or sorry, Claude Code plus the MCP allows you to construct the code, write it, have it well validated, check it against our documentation, do all the things like that. The CLI actually runs that job on the back end and actually goes from, so you can actually get that set up and go from there. And then the last one there are those agent skills that I mentioned. So those are here. You can actually install those individually. And if you have that agentic terminal, I think some of them install this as well. If you use the whereabouts code whereabouts VS Code extension, the skills are included with that automatically. So you don't have to set them up that way. I still like to like install them with each project, but you can kind of see the instructions here on getting that all set up. Generally, I think going with the VS Code and then the Cloud Code extension there, depending on the tools, you should have the complete instructions there. But again, MCP, number one, well, first sign up for your account, get your API key, then your VS Code. If you want to go that route, that kind of installs everything. Or make sure you have your MCP, your CLI, and your agent skills and all the instructions there. So I'll make sure to include all the instructions for each of these. I'll drop a few links in here right now. So this is the full link for the agentic tools. And then this is walking you through the MCP server. You can go ahead and follow those. This is for the CLI. So let me just make sure I think this is a specific link. I did not want to ask Google about that page, so it was a mistake. And then the last one is the agent skills, which is here. So you have all those links now, and you can go ahead and get started from there. The other link just to sign up for Whereabouts, if you haven't had that yet, whereabouts.com. Oh, looks like my camera switched. That's strange. Let me just figure out what's going on there. There, we're back. Okay. Um, Go ahead and you can click try Whereabouts here, and this is sets you up with your free trial. So you can go ahead and sign up there to get your account set up. Okay. Cool. So once that's all set up, how do we actually go about building and constructing a project? So the way I start everything is effectively doing some exploratory work inside of Claude itself. This is connected into our that new spatial agent, things like that. And I'm giving it some direction about what I want to do here and actually all these different pieces. So these are the things that the structure of the project that I want to give it. It's telling me exactly what it's going to do. It's using the bronze, silver, gold medallion architecture, using the firm's VIRS, however you want to call that data set. Bringing that in, it's actually confirmed data sources here for me. So this is some other data that I brought in. We're loading more of these into the open data source as well. So we have things like our, the fuel models. There's some data from Landfire here as well. Terrain data, land cover. There's a fire forecast as well. And then some specific area of interest boundaries, buildings, critical facilities, roads, and then some population data as well. So it's giving me all of this data that I can use. I can go through. I just wanted to give you a demo of this if without like a much intervention from my side, but you can be very specific on what you wanted to bring in. It's giving me some rules to run a describe, limit 5 before I actually do anything. Here's how I can run the external ingest. It's validated that data source, pull range, things like that. Area of interest that I wanted to pull in. Here's how I want to use the medallion architecture, and then all these different pieces. And I can run this basically as individual Python files. So you'll actually go in and see what each of these do. Here's the API to the bronze to load that data in. Here's the silver detections to find the fires, and we load that in. Here's the silver weather data. Here's how we create the gold layer. And then here's the context grid that we bring in as well for on-demand queries and stuff like that. So it's telling me how I can build all these different things, spatial SQL for all transformations, Python for that, SQL formatting, uppercase keywords, CTEs for nesting, no function over 40 lines. So break the code apart and have some specific pieces. So this has kind of filled me in, but you can see here as it goes along, here's the different things it's actually checked out to actually go in and validate what data sources are there. And when it's listing the catalogs, it's actually just exploring the catalog itself. It's not running any queries against your account. So it's doing some different things there and then running its analysis here as well. So there's some different pieces. Yeah, I see a question here. I don't know if I can take people off mute, but yeah, if you want to just Vikash, if you want to just drop your question in the chat, you can do that well. I don't know if you're able to go off mute. If you are, go for it. But let me see if I can actually. Oh, there, I can allow you to talk now. Go ahead. Oh, are you there? I think you have to unmute if you're trying to unmute. Otherwise, go ahead and type the question. But I should allow you to talk. All right. Let me know if it's working. Or if you want to drop it in the chat, you can do that there as well. So just let me know if that's a if you want to do that too. Okay. So I'm going to keep pushing forward now. So effectively now I've had my Claude MD file built, and then I'm building that into my repository here. So here's my complete setup that I built. Effectively, I really just started with these pieces here, which is the Claude, which has my rules and my skills here. And then it also has the Claude MD, which I pulled over from before. So that's what I built over there. So what I've done here, the rest of this was built by the AI coding assistant. And again, I don't want to like be specific in terms of what you do or don't do here, but you can see some of the things that it's doing here in terms of doing some validation scripts for understanding the scoring. Here's some validation queries that it's built. Here's some of the actual pre-flight scripts that it can run to make sure everything is running. And you can actually check all those pieces out. So it's, it's building some job submissions and things like that to actually check all these different pieces. And then what's most important is that it documents some of these different pieces for me as it goes along. So I gave it very clear instructions to say, what are some decisions that you're making here? So I can go through and read exactly what it's doing to see all the different pieces. Here's all the different things that it's done, some of the different components that it's chosen. Here's the schematics that it's spitting out for me, and I can actually go and validate all these different pieces as well. And here's the scoring rationale of the actual model. So again, a lot of this was very hands-off for me because it's a demo, right? We're building this as a demo. You can be as directive or as not as you want. And you can see the choices it made in terms of weighting and stuff like that. This is probably the most important part for you to validate your pipeline, because especially it can feel, and I know this is something that's been challenging for me, is like it feels like you're very hands off from the code and it's running this thing for you. I want very clear structure in terms of what it's actually doing. And, and I need that to give me those pieces back. There's also these other skills. So we've added some different pieces here. There's some different spatial SQL patterns that we've put in place here that you can kind of understand some different structures here, as well as the pipeline designer, which gives it some structure in terms of that bronze, medallion, and gold architecture. So it gives it a design workflow here, and then it restates those in the rules, right? So these are very hard typed rules. You can see these are much shorter. Here's how it follows this. Here's the skills. You must use that skill. Bronze tables are append only, never overwrite. Every table goes into Havasu iceberg. No loose parquet or CSV outputs. Here's how it should structure the dry run. Here's the job rules. Use a dry run to inspect the request. Do all these different things. You can put controls here for how it submits and things like that as well. Configuration secrets and validation. Now, these are all pieces that it built around this and basically developed out, for me on my behalf. Again, you can hard code these rules and type them yourselves, or you can, basically give it instructions to expand those out for you. So you can, I wrote some of these and then I had it, kind of fill those in and backfill some of the actual, instructions to make them a little bit more specific, a little bit more directive. So those are some pieces there, but these are additional skills we're adding in as well. So these are some of the CLI recipes. I think these are some pieces that come out of the box with it. So it has these pieces in there as well. So this is what it built. It actually built the individual jobs here based on that exact pattern that I described. So it has some of the static context. It has the ingestion of the firm's data. This is the job that actually runs that for me. So it gives me this complete structure to pull that in, sets up the Sedona context, runs that in, expands the schema for me. inserts that into a new table if it doesn't exist. This is the like the hard stuff that makes it very easy for me to, or for you to actually go in and start structuring these pipelines very, very quickly. So we have the data, the weather ingestion. It added a piece where it brought in like an open weather API to actually pull in weather data. It does the silver detections here, silver weather data, and then the actual gold risk for everything here. And you can see here, I basically let this, kind of run on plan mode. Here in between, it's using the MCP to test these queries and validate and build them out and do all these different pieces. It's using some of these different pieces to do the agent planning, building all these different pieces out. Here's the complete plan it saved out for me. So I can always go back and check and validate and restructure and push back to that plan. And then it had it build and run the complete job for me. So it built this whole thing out. So again, this is a demo, but it just shows you how you can kind of throttle how much involvement you do or do not want with this pipeline, but it can build a complete structure here. And all I need to do now is basically go ahead and tell it to rerun this for me for today. I ran this, yesterday, and I can have it rerun it for me today to write all these different pieces. So this is it actually constructing the code. There were some questions that it had to ask me to bring these things back. So it had me run through those different pieces. But this is the actual risk score. So we have a connection in with the cart. You can actually see that here. And I have it had it run it for one test, which is Ventura County in California. So that's this county kind of north of LA, between Santa Barbara and LA. And there's some things I would want to fix. Like I think some of this, there's some gridding effects here with some of the H3 bins and stuff like that. But it's very readable, and you can see here that it gives me all these different elements within each cell. So for this cell, I can see, and we can actually go in and you could add more kind of components as well, but you can see here, here's the wind max speed for that specific day. Here's the temperature, the building count, the RH percent, and then it's giving me this sort of risk score here, which is how this map is styled. So obviously there's more development down here. So that's sort of where that is. You can see there's more buildings. Here's the max temperature in Celsius. Here's the max wind speed for this day. Again, I just have to rerun this and it will reload for now. Here's the slope based on the elevation and those. The fuel model group is from the land fire data set. So that's the fuel that's blowing in. And the risk score is relatively low. Risk class is low here and stuff like that. There are some higher risks up here. So there's some higher risks here. Basically, here's the scoring. It's timber, the slope is high, wind speeds, temperature max, things like that. So it's giving me some of these different classifications for the risk there for these specific elements based on my design. This is my design that I've given it and things like that. So you can kind of understand the risk in these different areas today. Lighter is lower, the brighter yellow is a higher risk and things like that. So it's a score out of 100, as you can see here for today. In the context of today, this is high risk. And that's the way I wanted it set up, was just to give me like context as of today. But you see the score is still low. It's up here, it's 14.1 versus down here, it's only 4.6. But if these were to jump much higher, it gives me that context as of right now today. And I can just restyle this and visualize this in any way. So if I wanted to go ahead and change this, I could change the color here based on the risk classification. And we'll just go to something that's easier to see here. And you can see how it's classified the risk here. I think these are going to be our moderate. These are going to be our low. These are going to be our high. And then I think these darker ones are going to be extreme. So that's kind of how I've based it off of that. So you can see where these classifications show up from there. Now, some things I'm going to go back and correct. You can see some of these hexagonal edge effects here, which I'm not too super thrilled about. So I'm going to have to go again and inspect that, because I think it should be a smoother effect or something like that. But again, it's doing exactly what I want from that perspective. And you can get all the different pieces here. You can see here some of the wind speed that's where those hexagonal pieces come through. So I'd have to do some smoothing there, and I can actually visualize and inspect that. But, temperature, same sort of thing. Building counts. Oh, that's looks like I threw an error there. So that was my fault. And hopefully our map will load back up here. So let's see if we did this right. And then I can actually go ahead and check that out. Yep, Good. That was my problem. And then you can actually see some of the things like the fuel model groups and stuff like that. So that's coming from the actual raster data. And we can let's see the slope degree. So you can see here the elevation slope, which is from a more granular raster. So basically what I'm seeing here is like if I had some more granular weather data where I was able to smooth that out, I could get a better result there. But that's where some of those effects are coming in. So I might go back and say, hey, can we smooth or model this to spread that out so we don't get those edge effects as sort of advances before. But this is what the challenge is basically going out and building something exactly like this. So those are the pieces that I would recommend, and I'm kind of handing this over to you to go ahead and do that. Now, how can you get started, and how can we help you out as you're building this challenge out? So number one piece is as you're signing up, if you just go to whereabouts.com and you go to the try. You should see this to contact us here. You can go ahead and contact us here. You can basically request a support inquiry and just mention that you've signed up for the Spatial Pipeline Challenge. We'll help you out and get you started with that. So if there's anything that you want to do from I need help getting my VS Code set up, I'm having some challenges with these different pieces, that would be great. This will get you just basically open a support ticket on your behalf. We'll see that and we can reach out and get you helped up. So that will do that for you here. It'll also get you the credits that you need to, run through the complete challenge and go through those different things. So that's probably the biggest piece there. So if you need any help, we can go through that. Again, I don't want to like dictate what you should be building because you all work in different industries and do lots of different things. But those are some pieces just to help you get started and go through the structure there. So what we'll do is we'll follow up over email and just kind of go through the different steps to say, hey, here's day one. Here's the different things you want to be doing. We'll spread them out a little bit because I know realistically with things that people are working on, you're not going to do this in, today, then tomorrow, then the next day. That's a little bit of a challenge, but I want to give all these pieces to you so you can actually go and start testing and building this out. Right. And the more that I can give to you to actually go and build for things that are relevant to you in what the area of the world you're working in, that's going to make it a lot more useful and impactful for the work that you're doing. So we'll go through all of this. We'll send and follow up with all the links and go through there. You can reach out and check in with our support and go through there. We'll follow up with any messages. The messages go to me and some folks that I work with. So we'll follow up there. So that's the challenge here. And again, it's really going through this step of step one, getting set up, step two, planning, and step three, running and building, and then actually showing what you've actually built out from there. So I'll pause there. We'll have follow-ups for everyone over email. If you're doing this on the live streams and caught us on one of those, you can just follow the same links, head to whereabouts.com/free-trial and get set up there. So you can go ahead and do that. And you'll have all those things ready to go from there. So yeah, please check those out. If you have any questions right now, burning questions, you can just drop those in the chat or raise your hand. I can take people off mute as well, which I found out. I didn't know that I could do that. So if there's any questions, just raise your hand and get started there, or you can go ahead and drop those in the chat. There's one here. The recording is available. It's going to be live on YouTube, so we'll actually have that, and we'll send those out as well, just as a follow-up. So the recording is pretty much live streaming, and it should be available on YouTube immediately after this. I think his LinkedIn does the same thing and caches them there as well. So yeah, any questions beyond what we covered here today? Now, this is quite a bit, but I wanted to just make sure we're answering everyone's questions. All right. I am not seeing any here. I know, Vikash, you still had your hand raised. Did you still want to ask a question? It's not limited to Claude Code, no. So if you go in here, there's instructions for getting everything set up. So if you go to docs.whereabouts.com and this new banner for the agentic tools, you can go to here, pick your tool, and it gives you the different tools that we allow you to work, or sorry, that we integrate with. So I know we heard Cursor, we heard Codex. If you want to use VS Code, Claude Code, Claude Desktop and Web, Open Code, ChatGPT, whatever. You have all the different instructions for each of those here. So again, that's this link right here. Cool. Other questions? Awesome. Great. Glad you're going to try it out. 3D models like mesh model, BIM, AEC, can we build with this? So that's one piece if you're using like, depending on what you're using, if it's like point clouds and stuff like that, we don't have like support for those native reads directly. So that's one piece. In terms of data sets you can read in. We do support any like basically vector data source. So your, GeoJSONs, GeoParquet, even your shape files and stuff like that, you can all read in. We support raster data. So if it's in GeoTIFF, that's the most optimal. So you can actually read in GeoTIFFs and stuff like that, as well as NetCDFs. So you can actually read in NetCDF data and stuff like that. Now, there are some like ways to do sort of a middle ground read. And that's something that you can actually program into the agent. Sedona DB is our like local sort of Rust-based pieces that you can actually use and build that in. So it will read that in. It's installed in our runtimes, and it can read lots of different other data sets temporarily in memory and then turn those immediately into a table. So that is a strategy you can use if you need to do like sort of a read of like, hey, here's some data. I need to load this in, read it, and then turn it into a proper iceberg table. Sedona DB can accomplish a lot of that for you. GeoParquet data works the best, actually. Yes. So if you have GeoParquet, that works. That's our most optimal for vector data. So if you already do that, you're way ahead of the game. Cool. Other questions? On the note of 3D, can you have the map use custom 3D models to represent a data point? So we have functions for spatial SQL functions that support 3D functions. In fact, you can support 4D as well. So if you have an XYZ coordinate, you can build those out and do different spatial SQL with 3D functions. Or if you have telemetry data, that's like GPS traces, you can have 4D, which will basically have, your X and Y, your Z for elevation, and then your time point as well. So that's really useful for telemetry mapping and things like that. So if you do have GPS type of problems, that's a really good use case for that. Yeah, to submit your solution, basically we're trying to get people to share these. So all you have to do is just use LinkedIn. You can, post it, you can tag our company page at Whereabouts and just use this hashtag and we'll know what that looks like. You can post the map, you can post your results, you can post your steps, your findings, whatever you want to do to share with us. This is kind of one of those things we're testing of just building in public. So we want to see what people get, and that's all you have to do. We're just kind of keeping it as hey, let's see what you build and share that and build in public, and we'll make sure to kind of share and amplify that as well as you're building those things out. Cool. Other questions? All right. Well, if you do have other questions, yeah, I showed you where to find us. Just go to whereabouts.com/contact and get in touch with us there. Get signed up for your account. We'll be sending some emails just to walk back through all these different pieces to tell you each of the different steps to go through. So keep an eye out for those. If you didn't sign up directly on our website and you're watching this in the live stream, make sure just to go ahead and sign up. You can just do that. All you have to do is just go to whereabouts/events and you can sign up. Oh, it should have been there. You can just contact us directly through the contact page then, and we'll just get you added to that email chain. So you can just go ahead and use the whereabouts.com/contact, say just add me to that list and we'll take care of it on our side. Yeah, webinar recording is going to be up on YouTube, so you can check that out as well. So probably right after this, just search for Whereabouts on YouTube and you'll get access to it there. It takes like a few minutes for it to load, but it'll be on there. All right. So with that, you expect to hear from us soon, me and our team as well. Get signed up. You just contact us if you have any issues, and we're excited to see what you build with all these different tools, and we're excited to kind of see how you use them in the wild. So again, thank you for spending some time with me today. We'll be in touch, and yeah, happy building. All right. Thanks, everyone.